Hello everyone. Today I want to talk about something that I think a lot of people in this community can relate to. You've made the changes. You're eating the salads, you cut out the processed food, maybe you even went gluten-free or low FODMAP, and yet your IBS symptoms are still there. The bloating, the unpredictable bowel habits, the cramping, the discomfort, and you're sitting there thinking, what am I doing wrong? IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, affects somewhere between 10 and 15% of the global population, with significantly higher rates reported among young adults. Yep, lun ara trm alara ge re. Women are diagnosed nearly twice as often as men, and the condition is increasingly being linked not just to diet, but to a complex interaction between the gut microbiome, the nervous system, early life stress, and visceral hypersensitivity. That last term is key, and I'll come back to it. So let's start with the first reason your IBS might not be improving. Despite healthy eating, and this one surprises a lot of people, many foods that are objectively healthy can be high in what are called FODMAPs. This stands for fermentable oligosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides, and polyols. I know, that's a mouthful. But essentially, these are types of carbohydrates that are poorly absorbed in the small intestine and get rapidly fermented by bacteria in the large intestine, producing gas and drawing water into the colon. A study published in Gastroenterology demonstrated that a low FODMAP diet reduced symptoms in approximately 70% of IBS patients. But here's the twist. Foods like apples, garlic, onions, legumes, and even some fermented foods are high in FODMAPs. These are foods that most people think of as incredibly healthy. And for someone with IBS, they can be serious triggers. Think of it this way. Imagine your gut lining is a highly sensitive microphone in a concert hall. For most people, the normal sounds of digestion are background noise. But for someone with IBS, that microphone is turned all the way up. Even normal amounts of gas and intestinal movement feel loud, uncomfortable, almost unbearable. This is what visceral hypersensitivity means. The gut is not damaged, it's oversensitive, and certain foods, even healthy ones, can amplify that signal dramatically. This is why so many people with IBS find that their symptoms spike during exam periods, relationship stress, work pressure, or any emotionally intense time, even when their diet hasn't changed at all. The gut is listening to your brain constantly. And if your nervous system is in a chronic state of low-grade threat response, your gut will reflect that. So the second major reason your IBS isn't improving might have very little to do with food. It might be your nervous system. Yep, lan ara te ermalara gere. Cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, has shown clinically significant improvements in IBS symptom severity in multiple randomized controlled trials. A meta-analysis published in Alimentary Pharmacology and Therapeutics found that psychological therapies, including CBT and gut-directed hypnotherapy, were more effective than usual care alone for reducing IBS symptoms over the long term. Not slightly more effective, meaningfully more effective. And yet almost nobody talks about this when discussing IBS management. Now let's talk about the microbiome, because this is an area where the science is evolving rapidly. Berkalakmata Bukonu L. Alan Michter, researchers at King's College London conducted one of the largest gut microbiome studies in IBS patients and found distinct microbial signatures associated with different IBS subtypes. What this tells us is that IBS is not one condition, it's likely several, each with a different underlying microbial and physiological profile. This is partly why the same dietary approach doesn't work for everyone. Someone with IBSD, the diarrhea-predominant type, has a very different gut environment than someone with IBSD, the constipation-predominant type. And treating them identically makes no sense from a scientific standpoint. Here's another thing worth considering. Probiotic supplementation is incredibly popular among people with digestive issues. And yep, lan ara te armalara je re. Certain strains do show benefit for IBS, particularly lactobacillus and bifidobacterium species in specific formulations, but the evidence is strain-specific and dose-specific. Taking a random probiotic off the shelf without knowing which strains are in it or whether they've been studied for IBS is essentially a gamble. The quality and diversity of probiotic research is improving, but the consumer market is still far ahead of the clinical evidence. And then there's something called small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. SIBO studies estimate that anywhere from 30 to 85% of IBS patients may have concurrent SIBO, where bacteria that should predominantly live in the large intestine migrate into the small intestine and cause fermentation much earlier in the digestive process. The symptoms of SIBO overlap almost entirely with IBS, bloating, gas, altered bowel habits, abdominal pain. And here's the critical point. If you have SIBO and you're following a high-fiber plant-rich diet, you may actually be feeding the overgrowth and making things worse, even though you're technically eating healthy. This is something that requires proper testing, typically a hydrogen breath test, and targeted treatment. That's all for today. See you in the next one.